Thank you for joining us today. Paragon is pleased to partner with Constellation PowerLabs to present a webinar over establishing a sustainable parts quality process. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping notes. Feel free to use the Q&A button below to submit any questions. And this webinar is being recorded, and a link will be made available to you to distribute to your colleagues or anyone who was unable to attend. Presenting today will be Doug Van Tassel, the President and CEO of Paragon, Tim Vickers, the Senior Software Manager of Paragon, who will also be demonstrating some great technologies that we have, and Jeff Hilker from Constellation PowerLabs. He is the Business Development and Customer Experience Manager. I'll hand it over to you, Doug.
Yeah, thanks, Heather, and welcome everybody today, this afternoon, depending on your time zone, I guess. So we really wanted to pull up on where we're seeing some of the trending in parts quality as we've worked together more with Constellation PowerLabs, developing some tools and processes. Many of you have used us to come in and help establish your programs. And then kind of looking at the end of that as to where things, have to go. But before we get into that, we were gonna, I was gonna spend a little bit of time as to who Paragon is, what we do, and Jeff's gonna do the same on some of the history with Constellation PowerLabs. So the one thing that we wake up every day at Paragon, our 300 employees, what we do every day is, really we're trying to help the industry remain reliable, safe, and economical. So the challenges that the industry's had, and those have changed over the years, we try to make sure our ears are wide open, and we're making sure we're coming in with solutions to some of those challenges. And we do that really through our 4 product lines, where we're doing custom design, where we build chillers, motor control centers, HVAC systems and whatnot with our own intellectual property, as an OEM. Our instrumented control division, which is split between repair and reverse engineering, more in the traditional analog equipment in a lot of your plants, and then more recently a hard pivot to digital INC with some acquisitions and talent acquisitions that we've done. Qualification dedication is sort of the mainstay of our business. So between legacy ATC nuclear and nuclear logistics, the combination of those 2 companies is really we perform about 15,000, or have performed about 15,000 individual dedication and qualification efforts. And then our Peaks program, which encompasses different types of activities, from a open web base where you can go in and search parts, to broker and utility exchanges, to more of the things we're going to talk about today with the PQI, the management of a PQI system. Okay, so to elaborate that a little bit more as to some of the examples of that, one of my favorites as an obsolescence example that we solved out there was on the Woodward governor controls. So this is something that's hit a lot of people's top 10 lists that have this equipment. So we reverse engineered this product. It was actually a joint effort after we had developed it through the GE BW owners group to take that across the industry. Within that team, we're really focused on how can we extend the life of critical INC assets through repair and reverse engineering. So we perform a lot of repair in the industry. So rather than discarding safety related parts, we extend the life of those. In addition, performing reverse engineering both as a bridging strategy and a permanent strategy, like we talked about with the Woodward. So we have done things like complicated items like traversing core probes, all different types of equipment out there in that program. The other program we offer is Peaks, and that's what we'll be talking about more today. But really what Peaks is we bring people, data, and technology together to solve solve problems. So, you know, this is something we'll talk about in more detail, but the PEAKS program has been widely successful. We're used by 100% of the industry, the U.S. industry, to purchase parts, and about 85% of the industry we broker to sell parts as well, through that on utilities, utility exchanges. Another area that a lot of people may not know about is we've been very active in acquisitions. So a lot of the challenges faced with the industry is suppliers exiting the industry. So we have purchased ATC Nuclear in 2017. That was really our foundational company. Then we acquired Nuclear Logistics in 2020. And in 2021, we bought Technology Resources, a company led by Ted Quinn, former ANS president. They specialize in licensing for digital upgrades. And then Rock Creek Innovation, which developed a FPGA safety system, digital safety system, that's become the go-to system for all the SMRs and being looked at very closely, even in the early phases here by a lot of the operating plants. It really brings a way to bring de-risk a safety-related digital upgrade and gives you the benefits of analog with the functionality of digital. And we'll, you know, that's something I think the industry will hear a lot more about, you know, as we progress in and look at using as digital becomes more implemented across the fleets. Okay, so the purpose of today's meeting is another challenge that we've got out there, and we're well suited to help the industry, what I would say, identify, prioritize, and execute on. And this is on parts quality. So something, you know, it's very important from an equipment reliability standpoint. You know, it's been trended for years and looked at for years, but in more recent times, it's been looked at hard again, and it's still not meeting the expectations of the regulator in the industry in regards to the failure rate on parts. When you look at the scope of this and what it encompasses and the execution of it, it can be daunting. So that's where we really want to take some time today to walk through. But you know, it all starts with the original execution of the part, as far as if it's in inventory, you're buying a new part, that it's got the right requirements on it, that it's being managed in the right way, and you understand, you know, what others are doing, and it be a living program. So if something does not experience a failure rate and you drop it out of your program, how do you manage that? Or if there's new items from another fleet or a constellation that's identified as a PQI part, how can you manage that, or how do you have access to that? And that's really where this partnership between Constellation and Paragon really comes into play, that can help you implement that. Okay. So the response has been very favorable from an INPO standpoint. It seems the industry knows what the problem is, and what they need to, you know, what they need to do to do about it. Now you're into where the rubber meets the road and actually executing on it. The one common denominator out there is over 6% of the industry already utilizes PowerLabs. So Jeff will take you through their history and what they've done, going back to Exelon since 2006. And the ability to leverage all that experience, all that failure analysis, all that trending is really critical to help implement your program. Okay. So from a response standpoint, there's several things that need to be done. If you don't have a program, you need to develop one. So that program document is critical, and we've helped many of you implement that. Procedures as well, of course. The change management on how you're going to manage, you know, from the transfer of parts to be tested, all of the requirements and whatnot, who the stakeholders are in supply chain, the warehouse, procurement engineering, program owners, and then and who's going to own it. You know, every one of these programs needs an owner, And then the trending and the continuous improvement, all that is on that as well. It's daunting to know what parts are in scope. The good starting point is what's already been tested with the size of Exelon and our Constellation. It represents a great cross section of the majority of parts that are in the industry. So it's a great starting point, and Jeff will elaborate on that. Then, you know, as you're going through, as I said, what do those items come in and out? How are you going to manage that? Importantly, and something that's overlooked, is how you're going to flag these parts in your ERP system. And that's not only the ones that are PQI tested, but the process, that handoff between what you identify that need to be tested and sitting in inventory versus what is tested sitting in inventory. This is more like augmented quality. So it needs to be specified as to what tests are required within the CAD ID itself. And then the item be properly flagged within your system that it's either a PQI yes, a PQI no, or has not been evaluated yet. And then these process changes, like I've talked about. What are you going to do with the existing inventory? What are you going to do with new? What if you're transferring a part from another, which we do every day? If we're transferring a part from utility X to utility Y or site Y, X to Y, and that part needs tested, you know, how are you going to manage that? And then again, like I said, big thing is, you know, making sure you got the right requirements in the CAD ID. So if it's a safety related item, you may want to add those requirements on to what you currently get on a dedicated and qualified item. So you're not having to repeat the effort. Or it could be a safety related item where the OEM right now is not performing those kind of tests, or it's just not within their scope. And in that case, it would be something that would run through PowerLabs. A lot of this would be critical non-safety items that you would want to put those requirements on. Okay. Oh, here's Jeff.
All right. Thank you, Doug, and good afternoon, everybody. In 2005, Constellation, then Exelon, had 43% of our unplanned generation losses attributed to parts failure. This was unacceptable, obviously, to us, and our senior leadership team suggested to our supply chain folks that they fix this problem, and they came up with the PQI program that we know today. So in 2006, we implemented that program. In 2005, as I said, we had 43% generation losses. In 2020, we only had 5% of our generation losses attributed to parts failures. In 2018, we won the Best of the Best tip award from NEI. At that point, we decided that the rest of the industry should be exposed to this or helped out with this. So we've since then been signing up. And as Doug mentioned earlier, we now have 60% of the nuclear industry in the US signed up with our program. In 2020, EPRI introduced or endorsed a PQI program in their nuclear plant modernization guide. And then in 2021, INPO released IER 21-4, which we're all so familiar with. So an overview of our PQI program is in three parts. So we define a test population. We do the testing, and then we analyze those test results and apply them to our individual plants. So defining the test population, we've worked very closely with Paragon. They have great expertise in this area. They do a wonderful job of defining a specific scope of test population for your site. And then they send those parts or prioritize those parts so you can send them either to Constellation or wherever you do your testing. We maintain a very robust database. We call it the inclusion list. This inclusion list has over 2,000 templates in it now, 2,000 different makes and models. It is a living, breathing document or a living, breathing set of components. Sometimes we remove items from that list, but a lot of times we're adding items. Once that population is defined, we flag those in your, or Paragon can help you flag them in your system, whatever your ERP is. And so when you need to use that part, it comes up or it shows that it needs to be tested. Comes to us or goes wherever it is that you send testing if you do it internally. And then we provide a continuously improving test template that we change the parameters on, or we add to the parameters as we learn more. So it's a constantly evolving program. Obviously, it's demonstrated to work very good for us. It's reduced our unplanned outages greatly. It creates an opportunity for us to go back to our vendors, our suppliers, and help them improve their product. Sometimes they're not so, forthcoming with what they're testing or how we're testing it, or don't like how we're testing it. But we usually get to a collaborative effort with them, whoever it is, to make a better product. And then we can help you quantify the benefits of this program. We have a return on investment calculator that allows us to give you or give your bosses the reason why you should be part of this program. So we've tested more than 95,000 individual parts since 2012. Well, I'm sorry, 95,000 different tests have been performed since 2012, more like 130,000 individual parts. The testing is not sample-based, it's all items get tested. In that 95,000 tests, 5.6% of them failed. So these are parts that would have gone into your plant or gone into your warehouse that were bad and caused a bad day. Warranty returns on new parts pays for about 80% of the program. And what do I mean by that? So if you buy a part new and you have it sent to PowerLabs and it fails, you can get the warranty replacement on that. If you take that part and don't get it tested and send it into your warehouse or whatever, and it lives there for 5 years before you need it, then you're not going to be able to get that warranty replacement. We've got 8,000 detailed failure analysis performed in the last 10 years. These are nuclear and non-nuclear, and we take that data, what we learn, and we feed it back into our PQI template. So once we know what a failure is, we will add a parameter or a test to our test templates, and then we continuously test that particular part for that failure. So the PQI community has the critical test list and the PQI list. When you're part of our program, then we provide those lists to you, and you can look up any part you want to look up. We create a quarterly newsletter and we put out weekly bulletins. If you're interested in being part of those or you want to see those, we can certainly send them to you. You just need to let me know who you are and give me your information. And I will turn it over to Tim to talk about Peaks.
Thanks, Jeff. So Peaks is an application that's been available for the last couple of years for the industry. It's a free application, no login required. And you go to our website, paragones.com, and you can start searching right away for parts. We have over 8 million inventory records provided from across the industry. We also have data from strategic partners like Constellation PowerLabs, like NRI, and also information from within our own databases to identify engineering solutions like repair, reverse engineering, commercial grade dedication. The Peaks combines technology, industry experts, and data for utility stock and suppliers with 24/7 support. So the real secret sauce with the Peaks application is not the application itself, but it's the people behind it. The Peaks team are expert sourcing specialists that have been working in the industry for a long time. A lot of them have actually come from working within nuclear sites, and they are here 24/7 to support any needs that you have in terms of sourcing. We keep a 24-hour call list so that we know who to call at 3 o'clock in the morning if we need a part. Turnaround time on emergent requests, 15 minutes during business hours, 1 hour on non-business hours, but there's always a phone number that you can call and get immediate response. We handle the entire transaction, which really, like I said, is the secret sauce here. So once you identify a part that you need and you send that request to the Peaks sourcing team, they take care of locating the part. You submit one request, no matter how many places where we find that part, you submit one request. You don't have to submit 10 if it's found in 10 different places, and then we go find it. So we'll locate that part, we'll get the quote, we'll get any documentation that we need with that and photos as well. We get the quote information back to you. And then once you approve it, we handle shipping, gets right to your door. We handle all the invoicing. As an added bonus on the sales side and participating in the program, we bundle all of the transactions into a single monthly payment to you, so you don't have to deal with the details of all those transactions throughout the month. And that's the brokerage business where we handle that aspect of the business for you. Now, Peaks has been very successful for us over the last couple of years. It's more than doubled in just the last couple of years, and quite a bit more from its inception just 5 years ago. Based on that success, we wanted to add to that, and that's how Peaks Plus came into being. So Peaks Plus takes a lot of the same information that was available from Peaks, but adds to it other information from your ERP system like Passport, Maximo, SAP. So we include things regarding related to work orders, material requests, master equipment lists, tasks on the work orders, combine that with information we get from across the industry, and alert you to conditions within your inventory that you wouldn't be able to see without having all of this data in one single place. So we provide a single pane of information that supports all your decisions for purchasing, PQI, obsolescence, and things that you see on the list here that we help with: contingent and avoided buys, parts quality initiative, which is what we're here to discuss today, inventory reduction, shelf life, critical spares, potential CAT ID consolidation, repairs, and obsolescence. The newest addition to Peaks Plus is the PQI Manager. So we pull that information together and help you manage your PQI scope, real-time updates based on the information you update in your ERP system. So as soon as you mark it as a PQI candidate within your ERP system or whatever system you use. While we're talking about this, it may be that your information is in a discrete field within your ERP system. It may be embedded within the description, or you may be using a completely separate system in order to manage this effort. Whatever the source is, we can flexibly incorporate that into the data that you're about to see in the live demo, so that we standardize it across the industry and everyone is talking apples to apples. We get real-time updates from PowerLabs as well. So as they add new tested components, we incorporate that into the data that you see within Peaks Plus. You can also see PQI industry matches. So if across the industry, based on the data that we have, at least one other station is identified that this is a PQI item at their facility for their use case, then you'll know that that item has been identified someplace else. And you can take that into consideration, whether or not you should add that at your facility based on your requirements. We have the full list of PowerLabs failure analysis and trending that goes back to 2012 and available in whatever context you're using Peaks Plus. We also have demand, quantity on hand, usage, and work order data. Once again, that one single pane to give you a very quick view of everything you need in order to make important decisions. So with that, let's go to a live demo. I don't believe I mentioned while I was talking about Peaks Plus, I did mention that Peaks is a free application available to everyone. Peaks Plus is also a free application, but since we do contain a lot more data here, you do need to register in order to be able to access the application. And of course, there's a higher data requirement also in order for you to get the most use out of it. The data I talked about with work order material requests, all those kinds of things. So who uses Peaks Plus? Well, it actually has purpose for a lot of different roles within your organization. Buyers, procurement engineers, engineering in general, program owners for obsolescence and PQI. And just today, actually, Jeff suggested that the warehouse folks might actually get use out of this as well, in particular with regards to PQI and recognizing what items are actually within scope and not within scope. So today, of course, we're going to focus just on the PQI program owner aspect of things. But the data that the program owner has within Peaks Plus, as pulled in from your ERP system provided by you, it can show up in a lot of different ways. So for instance, let's say that we're a buyer coming in to evaluate a purchase, and we put in the CAT ID. Again, this is a key distinction between Peaks and Peaks Plus. Peaks is rather part number centric. Peaks Plus is CAT ID centric because we have your data and we're showing your own data to you for your station, your fleet, your alliances. At first glance, we can see critical information here, what we currently have on hand, demand, usage, those kinds of things. But we also see that solutions that are available. In this case, this item's already been tested by Constellation. Now, as the buyer, I came in today just looking for a sourcing opportunity for this, but I realized, there may be more to this than meets the eye. Take a look, and we can see that this has indeed been tested by Constellation PowerLabs, and we see the results going all the way back to 2012 on this one. So this one was tested in the very first year that the program was around. We can see that the test this year for this item, 3 items were tested and one of them failed for a failure rate of 33%. So at the very least, it should give you something to think about as you're considering whether or not testing is needed for this item at your facility. If we scroll down a little bit, we see that we have the information for your material requests. So you could drill down and take a look at the work order information, material requests, those kinds of things, and evaluate if for the upcoming need for this item that's scheduled in October, whether or not this item should be tested before it's used within that work. Real quickly, other items that you can see here on the page are some alerts about the inventory that we told you about that we can present to you as a result of having all this data in one place. We can tell you, for instance, maybe you should take a look at shelf life. At least one other utility, one other station across the industry has identified shelf life for this, and we show no shelf life here. Same with industry PQI. We already talked about that, where they identified for their use case anyway, this is indeed a PQI candidate. You should consider it along with the fact that it has been tested by PowerLabs, and you can see recent failures on this item. A lot of information is adding up to make it a reasonable thought that you want to do testing on this item. So let's say we do want to go ahead and request that Paragon help us source this item. Remember all the things that Paragon helps us with in order to get this item. By the way, I forgot to point out that we're at a mythical station, Denali station. So this is no real data. It's created just for demo purposes. Let's request sourcing assistance for this item. So we come in and enter the quantity that we need. So we needed 20 total demand, but we already had 4 in stock, and we want to keep 1 left over after everything is said and done. So we'll get 17 of these. We'll request the date. Let's say that the end of August will be enough time for us to meet our first commitment of October that we saw in our material request. Is this an emergent request? We'd like to put a hustle into it. So let's say yes, let's go and get this an emergent request so we can knock this out as quickly as possible, since we do believe we're going to go ahead and do some testing on it. So we want to get this through the process as quickly as we can. This is something added to our process now, which we can support. If you, based on all the information that you see here in consultation with everyone else, that this really should get some testing before it gets used within the work on the critical component within the station, you can mark this as, yes, we want to do testing on this. And so in addition to all the other things that the Peaks team will do for you, we will take the item once we locate it and you've approved the quote. We will send it to Constellation PowerLabs for testing. Now, you'll get to see that quote, of course, in advance as well. It'll be included with the entire quote that we provide to you. But we handle the logistics of getting it to PowerLabs. They test all 17 of these items. Once they pass, then we get them to your door. So no extra effort on your part in order to get this thing tested and delivered directly to you. So include a little bit more information, replacement cost, vendor lead time, which is a very common reason that we see that we want to do sourcing and do some inter-utility transfers, as the lead time from the OEM can be a little bit too long. Clearly 180 days would be too far in advance to meet our October obligations. One other thing that we're gathering is whether or not this item is obsolete. So in other presentations, we talk about obsolescence and what it means within Peaks. This is Peaks Plus. This is information that we add showing that there is demand for items out in the industry that have been identified as obsolete. So that's one more resource in order to determine obsolescence. And then finally, include a message, include photos and documentation, please. So once you hit send request, this information will be sent right to a Peaks team sourcing specialist, again, 24/7. If you do need to call someone and get them on the line right away, and we do have the 24-hour number available down here at the bottom, you can reach someone 24/7, always on call. We do recommend you still submit this request first, so we have a common thread in order to talk to and make sure that everything is right, including things like your CAT ID, the queue level, part numbers, and all those kinds of things. So this request goes directly into our ticketing system, and all communications we have after that are tracked within that ticketing system. So all the emails that go back and forth between you and between our team, between anyone that is requesting this information, where we're requesting the part, and also with PowerLabs when we get them included for doing quotes. The entire conversation is tracked in our help desk system so that anyone on the team can pick up where they left off. So if you order this in the middle of the night, and someone has started working on it, and then when the next shift comes in, particularly during outage season, they come in first thing in the morning, they can pick up where that person left off, and the entire conversation is preserved so that we know exactly what's going on. So in this case, the buyer came in and they were looking for one specific CAT ID, but of course, you can look for everything that's in your queue today. This is something I already searched for before. So all of the searches you performed already are included here, whether it's a simple search or an advanced search. Here's the order queue for our buyer. And again, at a quick glance, they can get a lot of information before they even drill down into it. They can see the ones that have been tested here by PowerLabs, items that have been repaired previously by Paragon, that have been dedicated or reverse engineered. Now, using this same approach that the buyer used, the PQI program owner can come in here and do some searches of their own. So let's go back to the advanced search and clear this out. And let's say that we want to do some analysis just for boards. And we already have a spreadsheet through whatever means we've obtained this, and a list of items that we want to go through and check to see if they've been tested, and also what the rest of the industry has to say about them. So we can just select this entire column, copy the list, come back over to advanced search, paste it in here. You don't need to get rid of the column header or anything. Peaks Plus will toss that out and focus only on the CAT IDs. And do a search, and we get results on 51 all at once. And just at a glance with these icons, we can see the ones that have been tested, repaired, those kinds of things. But if we want to go in and say, let's filter this list only to those that have already been tested, it's very quick to just put in here tested, and only those results that have this icon will come up. If we scroll down a little bit, we can see that this filters our list down to 21 out of the total 51 that we had. And if you're ever wondering what tags are useful here to further narrow the data, you can click on this informational icon and get information. You can figure out things that have solutions that have been repaired, dedicated, reverse engineered, or tested using either one of those tags. You can also see those tags out to the right. So as a reminder, oh, I want to narrow my list by this to see what those items are. So now that I've narrowed this down to a list of items, boards that have been tested already by PowerLabs and that are on this list that I'm evaluating, I can download that list to a spreadsheet and share that with other people at the site, or use this also as a collaboration tool with Paragon and PowerLabs, saying, this is what I'm seeing right here. Can you help me out with this list? Now, of course, there are a lot of different ways you can slice and dice this. Coming back, instead of going with the CAT ID list, we could have easily instead searched for items that we've marked at our station as PQI, and then show me all of those that have been tested already by PowerLabs, or show me those that the industry agrees with me. We've marked it as PQI. They've also marked it as PQI, a little corroboration there. So a lot of different ways to slice it, a lot of things available to you as a program owner to flex through things on your own. But we've also put together something, the PQI manager, that goes ahead and does a little bit of grinding of the sausage for you. So if we take a look at the PQI manager, the things we see on this page, first of all, everything here is based on demand. So the challenges that we face with both obsolescence and PQI is that sometimes it feels like boiling the ocean. So this particular setup shows only those items for which you have demand. So these are items identified at your station, currently at our mythical Denali station, that we have flagged in our ERP system or some other database as being PQI. And if we wanted to go through this list, one of the things I like to do anytime I'm looking at any of the lists is expand the list, take up the entire page so that I can see more information at once as I scroll down through the list. And just as we saw in the other results, you get to the same detail screen if you click here. And additional information we see here also that this has been repaired by Paragon. So all these alerts will give you a status of things that you might not have otherwise realized. So we come back to our list, work through this, and it works with filters just the same way that we saw on the other page. Or you could filter by different things here. Maybe we only want to look at amplifiers, so we quickly narrow down that list. Again, you can then drill down from here or put it into a spreadsheet to share with others at your site. Now, we'll come back to this chart in just a moment. First, let's take a look at this card that spells out all the items that have been tested by PowerLabs that you do have at Denali Station that are not included in your PQI list. So you need to take a look at these and make sure. And again, it has the same kind of information, and you could drill down to see what the actual work being done is, what the material requests are. So just one click away, you have all this information available to you to help you evaluate whether or not you should add that to your list. If you do add this to your list and you update your ERP system with the flag or the description that flags it as PQI, it will be added to this list and dropped off of this list. So you can work through this to find items that really should be included within your scope. Over here with industry PQI flag, same thing we've already been talking about, where at least one other station across the industry has flagged it as PQI for their use. It is not included either in this list or in this list. So this is yet another set of things for consideration to see if you need to expand your scope. Now, coming back to the chart that we skipped past, again, demand is very key. And here we show your demand on a monthly basis. So if we're taking a look at what we have coming up in August, we click to drill down to this, and we'll see all of the items that we have that we've marked at our station as PQI. And we see that in this column here. These all have the PQI flag. Again, no matter how you have it in your system, we'll standardize it so there's a single indicator here so that anyone who looks at this data knows what that means. So this tells us that coming up on August 1st, we have an item. There are 10 that are needed that we've identified as PQI. So we will want to make sure that we have actually gone through with the testing on those items and they're ready to go for the work that we have. Hopefully, actually, we do it before July 28th with the work coming up on August 1st. Might be a little bit late to get all that done. So it might actually be more meaningful to look further into the future and say March of next year, make sure that we've gone through all of these items, sanity check, make sure that everything's been tested before we put it to use within our components. So one thing I wanted to take a look at here at the end with these items that we see in the across the industry, when we click on this item, actually this is a different one we looked at before. I was wanting to narrow this down to one example that we had. So let me filter this group. Well, that's not the right one, is it? There we go. I think this is the one. Well, we'll still talk to this one. So this item, we see that we have 1 on demand, we have 4 on hand, and that has been identified as potential item across the industry that would require PQI. And if you click on that item, it will give you that information. So this is something that actually Doug wanted to discuss in making sure that as you're handling the incoming items that have been tested, you need to pay close attention to the way the ones that are already in stock are handled. So Doug, if you could add a couple of comments to this one.
Sure, I'm responding to questions.
Oh, sorry about that.
So, here's an example where you've got a quantity on hand of 4, and you've got a demand out there, and you don't have a current PQI flag, be it yes or no. So it's important in your process that you identify how you're going to do the handoff between inventory that's on hand that's been flagged as needing PQI testing and what is actually tested. And then when you go out and buy a new part, that it's coming in under those augmented quality requirements tested. So you may need actually a couple flags in your ERP system or a way to manage that. So, you got a current handle all the time on what's in where your inventory position represents as far as a tested part. And different utilities will manage that in different ways. It's just something to keep in mind as you go through scoping, through transferring current inventory, and then buying new to replenishment. So there's a lot of activity going on right now as fleets like Southern and others implement their programs on testing current inventory versus buying new inventory and keeping that all straight, through a process.
Okay, that concludes the live demo of Peaks Plus and the PQI Manager. So let's return to the presentation and some closing thoughts.
Yeah, so again, it's when you start thinking about different ways you buy parts. So one of the highest failure categories of parts is transfers from one utility or one site to another. So that represents about 13% of all failures out there. So it's important that that's properly flagged. We're in the middle of that with all you every day, as far as moving things through on any utility exchange. So it is something that Tim showed out on the demo there that we can help with and deliver that part tested as part of the normal process. And same goes for new parts. For safety related parts, I think it's important to work with key suppliers in that and make sure those additional testing is put into the normal dedication and qualification process. Unless they can't do it or there's still a failure history. All the OEMs are not created equal, whether they're safety related or not. So there's no assurance that just because you're buying something safety related, it's going to meet the requirements. I don't know what the current percent is at PowerLabs of testing that's performed on safety related parts, but it's pretty high. What, you have that off the top of your head, Jeff?
And I know it's similar to what our overall is. So it's somewhere around 5% that it fails.
Yeah, but what percent of testing is on safety related versus non?
Oh, I see. It's probably about 15 or 20%.
Okay. Typically you're going to have a lot more requirements on the safety related parts, or if you're seeing failures there, you're going to be, working with those suppliers to do that versus a commercial part. So it's important. And, other things that, come up here, and we'll go through some of the questions. I've been trying to answer them as we go, and I'll answer them verbally and then type them out, is, how do you get to the data? How do you trend the data and whatnot? So, I think the demo demonstrated that you can see that's really the treasure in all this, is being able to see that failure history and that trending. One question that came up, and I thought about this, is for fleets that are going to do their own testing, how can the test information be displayed? If they want to share that, and there's a way that we can port that in, we can show it the same way we do PowerLabs right now. So if you've got a part you tested out there, like the Dominion that does their own testing, and you want to share the failure data on that part, and you want it to be visible in Peaks Plus for sort of reciprocity, that if TVA tests a part or anybody does, that it's visible, then we can certainly do that. So right now, none of the industry data that's being tested is displayed as far as the failure data. Only the Constellation PowerLabs data is displayed. So we can go to the next slide, Tim. We'll go to the questions. So, just kind of a wrap up, our value proposition really is, on the front end is the people. A lot of you work with Dave Mueller and Pat Murray. They were some of the founders of the Exelon PQI program, so they're resident experts on that. So they really help with that front end, and then of course the PowerLabs folks with all the experience they have. Data is critical in all this. We got about 8 million records that we get daily, but we still don't get everybody's data daily or frequently. We may get part of the data we need to run this thing and not all. So if you want to get into Peaks Plus and PQI Manager, you got to work with Tim. Usually assign a single point or a spot there as far as a point of contact. You may or may not have to go through into the ever deeper hole of getting IT support there. If you're pushing data to Rapid right now or Palm, we can normally, the gateway and the data set up that we can work with that. That's the important part. So again, mashing the industry data and your internal data and the industry data and the PowerLab data is where, the rubber hits the road with this tool. And the technology stack is really robust in this too. You can see Tim's done a lot of work. Tim was one of the original architects of Rapid, so he goes back a long way with making utility data work and all the part number discombobulations we deal with out there. So next slide. If you like this and want more, a lot more, we've got a 4-hour session following the JUTG next week. It's available both virtually and in person. So a lot of the key stakeholders are typically for the parts quality reside in the procurement engineering group. So they're well represented at this conference. So we decided Mark was gracious enough to, we're having it at the same venue. So we'll just follow right after the conclusion of the JUTG meeting on August 4th and provide lunch there for anybody who wants to attend. Same room for those of you attending. For those of you that are not, you can join virtually. Constellation will have their annual user group meeting from 1 to 2:30. So those of you that are PowerLabs members and have joined that before, that's you pretty much know what happens there. It's all the updates there. We will have a panel. So I think we've got Dominion and Duke and some others. I don't want to speak for y'all lined up, but like 4 utility presenters for that. And it'll be, more on some of the things we talked about today. Not at the high level PQI. I think we all know that. What is in the INPO NER, but how are they managing these little nuances that we're seeing right now on executing their programs? So there'll be some discussions around that. And then we'll jump in again, because obviously everybody that's there wasn't on this. And we'll do a thorough walkthrough again of the PQI Manager demo and take some of the feedback from this meeting and others as to how we can make that tool even better. So we got some Q&A.
I'll rattle these off and
Okay.
We'll just leave this up so that if anyone wants to register for that while we're going through the questions, you can scan this on your phone and enter your information there to be registered, both either virtually or in person. So the first question we have here is, what happens if PQI testing fails? Is the failed part still charged? And Jeff would like to answer this one.
Yeah, so it is. So we still do the same amount of work, so we would charge you for that failed part. However, we can help you with the warranty replacement. So if you've just bought it and it has some warranty, we can go back to that vendor, get you a new part, test it, and then get it to you.
Yeah, and I think on transfers, typically if a part fails or doesn't get through receiving, the selling utility will typically work with us on figuring out how to make that all work so you're not paying for it. So it probably very similar on a transferred part within the Peaks team.
Yep. Our next question here is, do I need to be a member of Constellation PowerLabs to get a part tested? That one's for you, Jeff.
Yes. So no, the answer is no. You can send parts to us. We will test them for you, just like we test anybody else's parts. The only difference is you don't have access to the data if you're not a member of Constellation PowerLabs. You don't have access to our database, but we will test any part from anybody.
Next question, what data is needed and at what frequency? I think that's right up my alley. So certainly the first thing we need would be inventory data, and a lot of you are already providing that. The more data that's provided, the better the experience, the more information you have at your fingertips. Things that we ask for are work order data, the work order tasks, the material requests, the master equipment list, and any other supporting data that you have that would be useful as you are managing your program. One of the things that we didn't really talk about here was that we also have the ability, because of the way this application is put together, we can flexibly incorporate your own custom data along with the data here. The application is very configurable based on data sources, based on layout. It can be configured at the fleet level, the alliance level, the station level, the work group level. So if there are things that are important, for instance, people in the warehouse and they should see things in a certain way, we have a lot of flexibility in putting that together. As an example, recently we were giving a presentation to a utility, and this one was about obsolescence, and they had some obsolescence data that they had handy. It was given to me on the day of the presentation, and we were able to incorporate it and have it live in the demo just that quickly. So if there's any other information that's useful to you as you're managing things, in addition to the things that we've requested, then please provide that, and it'll make it a lot more useful. We, of course, want to see this data updated, or at least the majority of this data updated on a nightly basis, because you want your data to be as up to date as possible as you're making decisions. So the inventory and all the work order related data and material requests really should be uploaded on a nightly basis. Okay, let's see our next question. Oh, anything else to add?
Yeah, and I think to elaborate on that is, that the utility that we have that data for, if something comes up where they want to look at single point vulnerabilities or critical spares, as Tim alluded to on obsolescence, whatever's up, we've done it for utilities looking at consolidating their CAD IDs, where they wanted to use the recode feature in asset suite. So once the data is there, it makes, we can do multiple things with that for whatever crisis du jour or whatever things you really want to, be looking at. We did a big project for one fleet on single point vulnerabilities for circuit cards when they had an INPO finding where they had some failures, equipment reliability issues with circuit cards, that some of the life expectancy is some of the shelf life parts on the cards. So we were able to sort all those cards by SUV, by demand, by criticality, pull all those in, get them tested, and put those back in inventory, fully tested and functional with all the shelf life issues, the caps and whatnot replaced. So that's just the kind of things. So it's not just PQI; it could be a lot of different things that you can do with this. And you can do, as you saw with the demo from Tim. You don't need us to do a lot of that. So you can slice and dice those things, any way you want, and we can modify that search queue if you wanted to add more fields from your ERP system to carve those out even more on Canon reports.
Those are very good points there, Doug, and it does point to the fact too that Peaks originally was created as an internal system that we used for data analysis, supporting the kinds of things that Doug just described. So we would take a look at single point vulnerability, critical components, all those kinds of things, and provide that analysis. And over time, we realized that sharing this data with you was valuable. So that's how Peaks came into being. And then we wanted to share more data with you. That's how Peaks Plus came into being. So that's sort of the entire life cycle of Peaks, and supporting our relationship with our customers with the data that we have available that we use for ourselves for analysis. So the next question we have here is testing being performed by any entities other than Constellation PowerLabs, or will testing be expanded to other facilities in the future? Jump ball on that. Who would like to answer that one? Doug?
So
Okay.
here's what I know. I don't know of any external companies. So we're a third party for these parts, but I know the manufacturers do some testing themselves. They might claim it's parts testing. Dominion has their own program. They test their own. Nextera does their own. TVA's got a hybrid. They're doing some in their own lab and sending us some. But that's the extent of what I know. Doug, if you have more info than that.
No, I mean, and for us, obviously being a safety related supplier of parts, we will typically, for our product that we're supporting, or Westinghouse or General Electric, that typically the parts we're providing safety related or even augmented quality, we would incorporate that testing if we have the ability to do it within or from the request from the purchasing utility. But as far as pure third-party facilities out there that are doing, sort of, their non-core product line testing, the only one that I know of is PowerLabs, or plants insourcing it and doing the testing themselves. It'd be a pretty big lift, I think, for somebody like a Paragon or others to do what Constellation's doing. They've been doing it so long and have such an extensive database on such a myriad of parts. So, hope that answers that. But right now, that's the only game in town.
We have one last question here. We're getting very close to the end of our time in just 3 minutes. Last question is listing of the utilities that are part of the PQI membership. So I guess maybe there are two answers to that question. First of all, from the Peaks Plus perspective, again, this is a free application that's available to all of our customers. So whenever you express an interest in it, you can be included in that. Currently, so all aspects of this are included within using the application. So including the PQI manager that you have available. It's the PQI manager is a new addition to it. So there are the people that have access to it currently are Constellation, not PowerLabs, but Constellation Generation. They have access to it currently, and we're looking at bringing a bunch more online within the next 2 to 4 weeks. And the other part of that question, I guess, would be those that are already using PowerLabs for services. I don't know that Jeff can rattle all those off, but I think we established that more than 60% of the industry is already using Constellation PowerLabs for testing. Is that right, Jeff? Is that the right number?
And at a very high level, I can rattle some of them off. Southern and Energy Harbor are in the program. USA and STARS plants both have very specific agreements that are in their overall agreements with Constellation PowerLabs. So they have access to this. Many of them have signed up. Some of them have not. PSE&G is in, Entergy is in, and that covers most of, I think, the utilities that are in.
Mm-hmm. There were some that were answered too.
And some were answered, yeah, by typing them. We did get one more in here that we might want to answer in our time remaining. None of this in-house testing includes rad aging, correct? But you'll coordinate that. I guess maybe that's back to you, Jeff, or
yeah, we do not do rad aging. We can coordinate it if it's needed, but I don't think we have many PQI parts that are in that we've ever had the rad age. I could be wrong.
That's usually in harsh qual, so we do lots of that. Just like a lot of the OEMs, so stuff that's safety related and in harsh environment is something we typically do.
Yeah, so that would be Paragon, not PowerLabs.
Yeah. And then on the answer, just real quick, how do you get in? I think Tim answered that a bit, but what does it cost? It's right now we don't charge anything for this. We make money if you use the service to buy a part through us, and we feel that's our value proposition. So between sourcing the inter-utility sourcing and us sourcing new parts, is how we fund our program here. And then Tim asked, once enrolled PQI, is it possible to access and trade credit for previous testing that other utilities perform? The answer to that is yes. So if you see a part in your PQI program, and Jeff, you can elaborate, that there's been no failures on, you can opt to not have that in your program, even if maybe it was something that was initially flagged.
That's correct.
So things are constantly coming in and out. That's where the live portion of this should typically be, should be a living thing. So if you're testing something, you're getting no failures, like a PM, you can, change the frequency of it or take it out of the program altogether, whatever. And you may see the contrary to that, where something that's never failed all of a sudden starts failing, and you want to put it in your program, through some change that may have happened. So the thing you got to be careful of when we present failures and the failure analysis and the trending, we don't really have visibility to the end use. So it may be the same part used in two different applications. So, for your plan, it may not fail, or the failure may not have a consequence. So that's the things that we can't, get to that level. That being said, most of what we do out there has got similar traits. And if you see a failure history on a part, regardless if it's critical application or not, you probably want to consider getting it tested. And then the question was asked, where does this program normally reside? I think we typically see it in procurement engineering, and you would agree, right, Jeff?
Yep, that's correct.
Yep. Supply chain may take ownership of it as well, especially if there's an SME in supply, that carries the ball on that, or even a material analyst. But we're typically seeing it sit in procurement engineering. So I think that's it. If you want to sign up for PEACH, you can email Tim. I don't think that we have the request on our website yet, do we, Tim?
Nope, but we're talking about it again just this week. So hopefully within the next week or so, we'll see that pop up there, and that'll be available. But in the meantime, I can provide a link to you to register for PEACH Plus, and you can share it with everyone within your organization, so that with just one request, you can forward it on to anyone else who needs it.
Yep. Okay, well, time's up, +2. So thanks, everybody. And we'll look forward to seeing some of you over the next couple of weeks between JUTG and the ANS meeting as well. So thank you, and have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.